everyone. Welcome to Steph's Garage Jewelry. I just want to say thank you to everyone who's supported me while I'm trying to learn how to do these video tutorials and create these videos of my designs, and I just want to say thank you. We have a very wonderful project here that we're going to be doing. This one is special to me. They all are, but this one is particularly special. I've dedicated this to my sister-in-law, Cassie, who we've unfortunately lost this year. And what inspired this series is that each year we usually go with my brother and sister-in-law to the Renaissance Festival here in Minnesota, and she loved going, and it was something very special to her and my brother, and it was special to my husband and I because we got to share these moments with her. And so I had a tendency when I made jewelry, I always make it for other people, and in this particular case for her, I had the joy of making pieces that she could wear to the Renaissance Festival. And she passed away in August, and the Renaissance Festival, I believe, begins we have kind of a couple things that usually happen under normal circumstances. We have our state fair starting, as well as in that time frame also the Renaissance Festival. And the Renaissance Festival here in Minnesota, I believe, runs through the beginning of October. And so with dealing with COVID-19, the virus, things, we didn't have the Minnesota State Fair like we usually do, and we didn't have the Renaissance Fair like we usually do. And in addition to that, we don't have her. And so I wanted to make sure I had the opportunity to make something for her in honor of her, of what I love to do for her, because she loved the Renaissance Fair. So I created this series as something that I would create for her to wear to the Renaissance Fair. And so that's what inspired the Cassandra series. So that's how these pieces, when I came about, is really thinking of what could I do for her, what could I make for her that would just be perfect for going to the Renaissance Fair. So when we look at this, so you're gonna notice, so you'll notice a few things here, is that I wanted to make things extra special. So we don't just have one stone here, we have 3 stones. And this particular piece, the colors are, they make me think of, you got the purple for royalty, and then you got the deep blue. I mean, everything comes together. It makes me think of the Renaissance Fair. It makes me think of gypsies. It's just a lovely piece. And I'm going to do different colors in the video here. Colors that I probably would have done for her because they're colors that she would have preferred. So I just thought we'd talk a little bit about this. So we have an 18 by 13 oval fancy Swarovski stone, and we have 2 SS47 Swarovski's Rivolis. And then we just have this band here that is nice and light, and it just has so much life to it. And I really appreciated how it came about. So I think she would have been very pleased. And so what we're going to be making together will be the colors I would have made for her, knowing her personality and her preferences. So let's go ahead, gather our materials, and let's get started. All right. For this segment, we are going to be bezeling our round SS47 Swarovski's Rivoli. This color here is fuchsia. And what you want to do, you don't have to do this. If you have a foil backing, you know, a thin layer of clear nail polish just helps protect it. It's not required. And I would say cut off about 1.5 wingspan of thread. That should be more than plenty. And then put a stop bead halfway through. All right. And then I started off by adding, because we're going to be, to begin with our peyote stitch, we are going to be working with 11 Delicas. And I have a total of 28 11 Delicas on my thread. And what you're going to do is you're just going to create a loop, a circle, and you're going to go through the very first 3. Whoops, let me just do that again. So I'm just going to create a little loop. There we go. And what you're going to want to do, let me get a little closer here. So you're just going to go through the first 3 11 Delicas here. Just like that. And what we're going to do is we're going to create a circle. There we go. Just like that. And then what we're going to do is we're going to do a basic peyote stitch. All right. And just for the record here, I did create a video of this particular bezel. So if you want to refer to that, because I'll go a little bit faster here, feel free to click on that link in the description. Otherwise, I'm just going to go ahead and go through it again as a quick review. All right, so basic peyote stitch. I'm coming out of here. I'm going to pick up 11 Delica. That's going to sit on the bead that I'm going to skip, and then I'm going to go through the following 11 Delica. There we go. And you can just use your fingers just to make sure things sit correctly. There we go. And I like to use my thumb and finger to make sure things aren't too tight and so forth. All right, so let's just do that one more time here. I'm coming out of here. I picked up 11 Delica, which will sit on top of the bead I'm skipping, and then I'll go through the following bead, just like that. And I'll use my finger to kind of help direct, my thumb and finger to direct that 11 Delica I'm putting on. If it doesn't sit correctly, the first few tend to kind of, you gotta play around with a few times. There we go. And let me fix that. There we go. There. And then don't, use your thumbs for the rest of the beads to loosen those up so they're not sitting too tightly and bunching up. And then do that all the way around, making sure you always you thread your way back and you are coming out of that 11 Delica you just added, okay? So go ahead, do your peyote stitch for your second round here, and meet me back here once you have them all on and you are coming out of this 11 Delica. All right, so I've added all my beads, and I'm coming through that very first 11 Delica that I started off with this particular round. Now before I go on to the next round, I'm going to shape and making sure that it's a ring form, my peyote bezel. So I'm just using a marker, and what I did is I just put it on the top, and I just gently form it all the way around. Just like that. Okay? Alright, so now we're going to start off our first round of 15-0s. And I'm going to be using Delicas for this round. And the color I'm using today is, it's a Mayuki, and it's transparent garnet. It's a really, really gorgeous color. So it's going to look really sharp here. Alright, so all we're going to do, and this is, you know, this is the fun part. So you're coming out of one 11-0 Delica, and I picked up a 15-0 Delica, and then I'm going to go through that next 11-0 Delica that's sticking out. So that 15-0 Delica that I just added is going to sit in that little notch. There we go. And I just use my fingers to help guide. Alright, so let's go ahead and do one more together. I'm coming out of here. I'm picking up a 15-0 Delica. It's going to sit in this notch here, and then I'm just going to go through to the next 11-0 Delica, just like this. I'm going to use my finger and thumb to guide the thread, and I'm just gently tugging, just like that. Okay, so go ahead, go all the way around, and then meet me back here. And when you do, have your needle and thread coming out of that first 15-0 Delica that you put on. And I am going to be switching over to the next round with my 15-0 round seed bead. So go ahead, finish up this round, and then meet me back. Alright, so now we're ready for our second round of 15s, and I'm switching to round 15-0s, and today's color is, let's see here, Silver Line Rose Copper. Okay, so it's a really pretty color. I think Cassie would have really appreciated this. Alright, so I am coming out of this 15-0 Delica. Whoops, let me get a frame. I'm going to pick up a 15-0 round. I'm going to go through the next 15-0 Delica, which is sticking out. And that 15-0 round will just sit in that notch. And I'm just going to use my fingers to help guide it. And I'm just going to give it a little gentle tug, just like that. And let me see if I can get this a little closer. Alright, so I'm coming out of this 15-0 Delica. I picked up a 15-0 round, which will sit in this little notch, and I'm going to go through the next 15-0 Delica. There we go. And I'm just going to use my fingers to help guide it a little bit. And there we go. And I'm going to do that all the way around, making sure when I'm done that I'm coming out of here. Okay? Then go ahead, remove your stop bead and thread your tail, and we'll get started on the back, okay? Alright, just like we did the front, and I apologize, I actually got started here. What we're going to do is we're going to be adding our 15-0 Delicas, and we're just going to put them in between these notches. So I'm coming out of this 11-0 Delica, I'm picking up a 15-0 Delica, and I am going through the next sticking out 11-0 Delica, just like that. And go ahead and do that all the way around. And then before we get started with our 15-0 11-0 Delicas, we're going to go ahead and pop in that stone. Now what you want to do though is you want to make sure your thread and needle are coming out of that first 15-0 Delica that you added. Okay, so go ahead, go all the way around and meet me back here. Alright, so now we're ready to start our 15-0 rounds in the back. And just like we did with the front, I'm coming out of this 15-0 Delica. My 15-0 round that I picked up will sit in this little notch, and I'll go through the next sticking out 15-0 Delica. Now things are going to be a little loose, so you're going to want to hold the stone into place. Alright, and just gently tug. And things will tighten up as we go along and after we do our reinforcement as well. So go ahead, go all the way around and make sure you go through that 15-0 round that you just added. And then meet me back here and we'll get started on our pattern. Alright, now that we've put on our 15-0 Delicas and our first round of 15-0 round seed beads, both on the front and the back, we're ready to start doing the inner embellishments of the front and the back of our SS round Swarovski's Rivolis. Now when we do this, one thing to keep in mind is we have what we call the low mountains over here, where you just have like the hills. You just have a small hill, and then over here we have a little mountain. And so we're going to be doing that. So we go hill, mountain, okay? And what we're going to be doing is, if you look in between each hill and mountain, there's 2 notches where there is no beads in between. So we'll build a small hill, skip 2, build a mountain, skip 2, build a hill, skip 2, build a mountain, skip 2. And that'll bring us back to that first hill. Alright, so when we do that, what we're going to want to do is, let me get a little closer. Alright, so what we're going to do is, I'm coming out of this 15-0 round. So I'm going to pick up a 15-0 round and go through the next sticking out 15-0 round, just like that. And then that will be my first hill. So I'm going to go ahead and skip 2 notches. Just like that, by going through the 15-0 Delica and the 15-0 round, the first 15-0 round. So I'm skipping that first notch, and that will reinforce at the same time. Then I'll go through a 15-0 Delica and a 15-0 round, and that will be the second notch that I've skipped. Alright, now I'm going to get started on my mount. So I'll add a single bead to 2 of the notches. So I'm coming out of here. I picked up a 15-0. I'm going to go through the next sticking out 15-0 like that. Whoops, I lied. Like that. There we go. There we go. Then I'll pick up another 15-0 and go through the next sticking out. So that's the beginning of the first mountain. There we go. Then we'll go ahead and skip 2 notches. So I'll skip this notch and then this notch. So I'll go through, I'm just going to weave my way through. So I'm weaving through the 15-0 Delica and the 15-0 round while not adding any beads. That's the first one. Then the second one. There we go. And then we got a hill coming up. So I'm going to pick up a 15-0 round. I'm coming out of here. I'm going to go through the next 15-0 round sticking out just like that. There we go. So that's our second and final little hill. Now we just need to make our way to our second final mountain. So I'm going to skip 2 spaces. So to do that, I'm going to go through the 15-0 Delica and the 15-0 round. So that's the first space I'm skipping, the first notch. Then I go through the next 15-0 Delica and the 15-0 round. Let me see if I can get a little closer. And that's the second notch that I'm skipping. All right. So now that I'm coming out of here, I have 2 notches where I'm going to be adding a 15-0 round, and that would be the beginning of the second mountain. So I'm coming out of here, I'm going to pick up a 15-0 and go through the next 15-0 sticking out, just like that. There we go. There we go. And let me see if I can get it into focus here. Right, so we put on our first bead. Now we just need to put on the second bead. All right, so I'm coming out of here and going through the next sticking out, just like that. There we go. So now that we have all of our mountains and hills on, what we're going to want to do is just weave our way through to finish. We have our hills finished. Now we just need to finish up our mountains. So I'm going to weave my way over, okay? And I'm going to go through the 15-0s because this will allow me to reinforce those beads at the same time that I'm doing my stitches. There we go. So I'm just going to weave through. I'm not adding any beads, okay? Not until I get to the top of that first mountain. Back up so you can see what I'm doing here. So here's the first hill that we put on. And as you can see, I'm not adding anything. I'm just weaving through. And I'm just maneuvering my way over to that first mountain. There we go. All right, so now that I'm getting to the top, so you should have a single notch at the top of the mountain. So we're going to maneuver there. All right, so we have at the top of our mountain, we have this little notch here. And what we're going to do is we're going to pick up a 15-0 round seed bead. We're going to go through the bead that it's going to sit on top of. Then we're going to go back through that bead we just added. And then we're going to go down and reinforce the mountain. There we go. Just like that. And then we're just going to weave our way through to the second mountain. So we're not going to be adding any more beads until we get to the second mountain, the top. So that was the first one. So I'm just weaving my way over. Coming to that second hill that we added, but we don't need to add any beads. We're just going to weave through at the same time, reinforce. There we go. And we're just going to make our way to the top of that second mountain. And if things get too tight, you know, feel free to switch over to size 13 needle. There we go. So right now we're at the top of the second mountain, and we have this little notch at the second mountain. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to add a 15-0, but instead of going through the next 15/0 sticking out, we're going to go to the 15/0 that it's going to sit on top of. Just like that. It creates a little hug because we're going to go back through the bead we just added. And what's nice about that is not only does it create that little hug, but it then in turn also reinforces everything. There we go. Now we just make our way back down the mountain. Okay. There we go. And I do like to end this. I'm going to just end this at it coming out of a 15/0 Delica. There we go. So, alright, so now that we got our pattern on the back, we just need to put our pattern on the front. So go ahead and thread your needle with the front thread and meet me back here. Alright, so what we did on the back, we're going to do the exact same thing on the front. The key thing though with the front is we want to make sure that we're mirroring the back. So what I did is I weaved my way to the point where I'm going to be starting off with a small hill. So if I were to flip this, the very first thing I see is I'm at this exact same spot where that one hill is. So this will be the first hill that I will start off with. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm coming out of this 15/0 round seed bead. I'm going to go through the next 15/0 round seed bead sticking out. So the bead I'm adding will sit on top of that Delica, just like that. And just like the back, we're going to go ahead and skip 2 spaces, so 1, 2, and I'm just going to weave my way through till I get to the point I want, where I can start adding beads again. So that's one spot that I skipped. There we go. Just like that. And that will be 2 spots that I skipped. Alright, and then from there I'm going to go ahead and add 1 bead to the next 2 spots. So I'm coming out of one 15/0 sticking out, and I picked up a 15/0 and going through the next 15/0 sticking out, just like that. And I'm going to do that again, just like that. There we go. Whoops. And I'll fix that. There we go. So now I just end up weaving my way through. So I'll skip these next 2 notches. So that's the beginning of the first mountain. Now we just need to maneuver our way to the beginning of the second mountain. The second hill. So we're going to go ahead, go through that 15/0 Delica and 15/0 round. So we skip 1. Then 15/0 Delica, 15/0 round. There we go. Just like that. There. Now we're ready to do our second mountain. So I'm coming out of one 15/0 sticking out. I'm going to pick up a 15/0 and go through the next 15/0 sticking out. There we go. And then I'm just going to maneuver my way so I can get to the second mountain. So I'm going through the 15/0 Delica and the 15/0 round. And the reason why I'm doing that is because it allows me to reinforce at the same time. There we go. And then I just got one more notch to skip. So I'm going through another 15/0 Delica and 15/0 round. There we go. Now I'm ready to put on my next mountain. So I pick up a 15/0, go through the next 15/0 sticking out. There we go. pick up another 15-0 and go through the next 15-0 sticking out. Oops, just like that. And then I go through the 15-0 Delica. Oops. There we go. And round bead, and then I go through the next. I'm just gonna weave my way through till I get to that first mountain. So I'm now going up the hill that we previously put on. I'm not adding any beads because I finished up the little hills. So I'm just maneuvering my way to that first mountain to add my bead, just like we did with the back. It's going to be exactly the same thing. There we go. There we go. Now I'm at the top of the mountain. There we go. We have our little notch here. I'm going to pick up a bead to fill that. I'm going to go back through the bead underneath where it's going to sit. Alright, because I'm going to create my little hug. And then back through the bead I just added. And then down the mountain. And what that does is it creates a little hug and it reinforces that bead as I'm adding it. There we go. So that's the first mountain completed. Now I just need to maneuver to the spot where I have my second mountain. So I'm not going to add any beads. I'm just going to weave through, and this will reinforce everything as I'm doing it. Alright. So going through that second mountain already. Second hill. And just trying to make my way over to that second and final mountain. There we go, as I reinforce everything. There we go. Get my tail out of the way. There we go. Making my way to the top of the mountain. So the top of the mountain is going to have this little notch right here where I'm going to be adding a bead. And as I add a bead, instead of going to the next bead that is sticking out, I'm going to go to the underneath where that bead is going to sit and create a little hug by going back through the bead I just just added. There we go. Use my finger to hold things in place, and then back down the mountain, and I'll go through and weave my way through. There we go. There. That 15-0 Delica. There we go. So now we have the front and the back done, and they mirror each other. So the next step is for us to go ahead and reinforce the center of this. Alright, so the center of my spine, we have the two 11-0 Delicas and then the single, we got the two 11-0 Delicas side by side and then the single. And it just repeats over and over. And what we're going to do with that, and by the way, I threaded my tail because my tail is just slightly shorter than my front thread. And I'm going to go all the way around with my tail to reinforce. I won't end the tail until after a certain period, so go ahead and leave the tail on. But then I'll switch over to my front thread after I reinforce the spine. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm coming out of here. I'm going to go through the bead that it's sitting next by, and then back through that 11 Delica it was sitting next to and I was first coming out of. And what this does, it helps tightens up the spine and brings everything together. It just creates a nice little hug. And then the center 11 Delica, I just go through and weave my way till I get to the point where I'm coming out of one of the 11 Delicas sitting side by side. And I just repeat. So let's go ahead and do that because I think I was going out of camera frame. So I'm coming out of one, going through the other in the opposite direction, and then back through in the same direction that I was initially, that 11 Delica. All right, there we go. All right, so let me do that one more time. So I go through one side, just like that. Back through the other bead in the opposite direction. And then back through in the same direction as I initially was going with the other 11 Delica. And then down the center spine. Okay, go ahead and do that all the way around and meet me back here and we'll start our outer embellishment. Alright, so I finished up reinforcing my spine here. And I'm going to go ahead and leave the tail on, but I did weave my way back to this 15 Delica here, so that way it's out of the way. And the reason why I'm going to leave this on, even though I went all the way around, is that I'm going to use this as a gauge to determine where I began reinforcing the next step and so forth. So that's why I'm leaving it on for now. Okay, so now I've threaded my front thread and needle, and I'm about to go ahead and get started with the stitch in the ditch. And what we're going to do is we're coming out of this center 11 Delicas. So you see how we have the center 11 Delicas and then the two side by side and then another center 11 Delica. So what we're going to do is I'm coming out of the one here. Okay, I'm going to pick up 11 Delica. It's going to sit in between the two 11 Delicas side by side, and I'm just going to go through the next 11 Delica. I'm just going to slide that through, and if it doesn't sit correctly the first time, just go ahead and pick it up a little bit and then just reposition it. Okay, and then you're going to just go all the way around and do that, and then so I'm coming out of here. Let me do one more. The bead's going to sit on top of these two here. And I'm just going to go through the next 11 Delica just like that. So go ahead and do that all the way around. And once you're done, go ahead and reinforce the entire thing. And then meet me back here and we'll get started by putting on our 2mm fire polish, okay? Alright, so as we look at our piece here, our component, we will be putting on two colors for our 2mm fire polish. So one color will correspond with the mountains and the hills, and the other color will correspond to the spaces that we skipped to in between the mountains and the hills. All right, so right now I'm coming out of this 11 Delica, this stitch in the ditch, okay, and I'm going to go through the next stitch in the ditch and I'm going to put on a fire polish. There it corresponds with part of the mountain, so I'll have one color there. There we go. So I have one color there. Then I have the next spot will be part of the space in between. So I'll have the second color in the next spot. And again, the next spot is also space in between the hill and the mountain, or the mountain and the hill. So I'll have that same color that I just put on. There we go. Then the next space actually corresponds with one of the hills. So I'll put on my first color that I initially started off with. Okay, then I have two spaces again. So it'll be my second color. Again, my second color. All right, then I will be putting on my first color because it corresponds with, in alignment with the mountain, the second mountain. There we go. And then I have another space that aligns with the mountain, so that will be the first color again. Then the next space aligns with in between the mountain and the hill, the little notches that I skipped, little spaces I skipped, and just weave through without adding any beads. All right, then I correspond again with a hill, so that's going to be my first color. There we go. And then again, that will be, I have two spaces in between my hill and mountain, so that would be color 2, and then color 2 again, there we go, and then color 1, because that's this other half of the mountain. There we go. Voila. And then I'll go all the way around again and reinforce, and then I'll add 3 to 4 half knots. Remember, when ending your thread, you want to either end it with 3 or 4 half knots, or you want to weave back and forth, changing direction several times, like we did with my tail thread, and I was able to end it because of that. With this thread though, I will go around and then go, I'll reinforce first, and then I'll go around and add 3 to 4 half knots and end that. All right, so we are going to continue making our bracelet, and we've already bezeled our SS47. If you haven't done so, go ahead and make a second one, because you're going to need 2 for the bracelet. And once you've done that, come back and meet us. For those that have already done 2, we're ready to go ahead and go forward. Now we're going to be bezeling a 18 by 13 oval Swarovski fancy stone. And fancy stone, the difference between a fancy stone and a Rivoli is that oval Rivoli will have a point in the center just like it does in the back. But because it's flat, that's how we know we're using a fancy stone instead of a Rivoli. With that being the case, we can go ahead and get started with our bezel. And I'm going to, the stone's a different color, however, I'm going to use all the same colors that I did in my SS47. You don't have to, that's up to you. In this particular case, I do. And again, I'm making this in honor of Cassie, my sister-in-law. So let's get started. And what you're going to need is you're going to need to thread your needle with your thread, and you want a wingspan, a full wingspan and a half. And a wingspan is from one arm to the next, and then the half you can just measure from one end of your arm to the middle of your chest. And put a stop bead on about halfway through. and add 40 11-0 Delicas to get started. And this process is going to be very similar to a round bead. Now, rectangles and squares are slightly different, and you have to think of things a little different, but in retrospect, ovals and anything that's rounded is going to be this, you're going to use the same principle. You're just going to have to adjust based on the size. So what we're going to do is we're going to add 40 11-0 Delicas, and I am using galvanized yellow gold, and it does have a Duracoat finish. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through my first 3 11-0 Delicas. There we go. And let me just bring the camera a little bit closer. All right. So I'm going to go through the first 3 11-0 Delicas. I'm just going to pull forward, and this will create a loop just like that. There we go. And we'll start off with a basic Fireline stitch, and we've done this plenty of times. So I'm coming out of, there we go, I'm coming out of here. I'm going to pick up 11-0 Delica, set it on top of the bead I'm skipping, and go through the next 11-0 Delica just like that. I'll use my fingers to guide everything. There we go. There. Just like that. Alright, and then we just do that all the way around, so I'll do it one more time. So I'm coming out of, I'm coming out of here. I picked up 11-0, which will sit next to the one I'm skipping, and then I'll go through the following bead. So I skip 1. There we go, just like that. And if it doesn't sit in place at first, and don't be surprised that it doesn't, and you have to kind of work with it, just use your fingers to put things back into place. There we go. It usually takes a couple of times. The smaller ones generally are a little easier, but you know, sometimes it's just luck of the draw. Alright, so go all the way around, and once you're done, make sure you're coming out of this very first 11-0 Delica. And what I do in between each stitch is I just go like this to make sure things don't get too tight and that my beads don't bunch up. So just keep that in mind. And meet me back here. We'll get started with our 15-0 Delicas. And I'm going to be using the same colors that I used in the SS47. So I will be using the transparent garnet. Alright, so see you back here once you've finished up this round. Alright, so I finished the previous round. Now we're switching over to our 15-0 Delicas. I'm coming out of the first 11-0 Delica that I added for that last round. I'm picking up a 15-0 Delica, which will sit right here in the very center of the notch, and then I'm just going to go through the next 11-0 Delica. There we go. And I'm just going to use my fingers to help guide the thread and bead. And if things don't sit just right, you know, feel free to kind of tug a little bit gently and then straighten it out. There we go. Let's do one more. So I'm coming out of here. The 15-0 is going to sit in the notch, and I'm just going to go through the next 11-0 Delica sticking out. There we go, just like that. And then I'm just going to use my fingers to help guide it. There we go. Just like that. And then I'm just going to go all the way around, and just like before, I'm going to make sure my thread and needle is coming out of the very first one that I put on. And then I'll be switching over to my 15-0 rounds then. Alright, so meet me back here and we'll get started with our 15-0 rounds once we've completed this. So we just finished up our 15-0 Delicas. Now we're switching over to our 15-0 rounds. And I am using the Silverline Rose Copper Duracoat. There we go. Nice color. And I'm coming out of this 15-0 Delica. It's the first 15-0 Delica that I put on. I picked up a 15-0 round, and I'm going through the next 15-0 Delica, and that 15-0 round is just going to go ahead and sit in that little notch. There we go. Just like that. And I'm just going to go all the way around. Let's do that one more time. Here we go. And there we go. And you just go all the way around, and then make sure, just like we did with all of our other rounds, is when you're done, make sure you go through that very first one that you went through the first time. And then go ahead and remove your stop bead and thread your tail, and we'll get started with the back with the 15-0 Delicas, okay? So finish up this round and then meet me back here and we'll get started on the back. Alright, so now that I've switched to my tail thread and I threaded so that I'm coming out of, get a little closer here, out of one of the sticking out 11-0 Delicas, I'm ready to go ahead and start on the back with my 15-0 Delicas. So I'm picking up one 15-0 Delica, and just like the front, I'm just going to go through the next 11-0 Delica so that 15-0 Delica sits in that little notch. Alright, and what we're going to do is, this is a looser bezel than some of the bezels we've worked with in the past. So we're going to go about halfway, and then we'll pop in our bezel, pop in our stone, and then finish off the 15-0 Delica. So meet me back here when you get halfway through, and we'll pop in our stone and finish off this round. Alright, so I've gone halfway around and I popped in my stone, and now I'm just going to go the rest of the way around. So I'm coming out of this 11-0. I picked up a 15-0. It's going to sit in the little notch, and I'm just going to go through the next 11-0 Delica. And you can hold this, or you can just hold it down like this, and it's up to you. If your stone pops out, it's not the end of the world. You can just pop it right back in. I just like to do this once in a while because it helps save on my thumb a little bit. It's all up to you on how you want to do it. Just make sure that when you are holding it, you're not holding it too tight. Okay? Just take good care of your hands. Alright, so meet me back here. You want to go all the way around. And what you want to do, just like I've said this a million times already now, what you want to do is you want to make sure that you come out of that very first 15-0 that you put on, 15-0 Delica that you put on, and then meet me back here and we'll get started on our 15-0 rounds, okay? Alright, now that we finished our 15-0 Delicas, we're ready to put on our first round of 15-0 round seed beads. And I'm coming out of this 15-0 Delica, and I picked up a 15-0 round that's going to sit in the little notch, and then I'm going to go through the next sticking out 15-0 Delica. There we go. And there. And we do this all the way around. So let me do one more. So I'm coming out of here. I picked up a 15-0 round. I'm going to go through here. There we go. And we just go ahead and do that all the way around, making sure that when we're done, we are coming out of that very first 15-0 round. and meet me back here. And what we're going to do next is we're going to get started on our pattern on the inside, on the back, and then we'll switch over to the front and work it on the front. Okay, so go ahead, go all the way around and meet me back here, and we'll get started on working on that pattern.